Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. Today's presentation, Wildlife and Landscapes of New Zealand's South Island, is brought to you by NatHab Expedition Leader Sam Kuperus. Sam grew up in Timaru on the eastern Pacific coast of South Island, swimming at beaches with scenic views of the Southern Alps. He completed his higher education at the University of Otago in Dunedin, receiving degrees in business management, philosophy, politics, and economics. After a brief spell as a corporate project manager, Sam hit the road and traveled extensively throughout the Pacific, Europe, Southeast Asia, and Central Asia. Along the way, he had developed a passion for sustainable tourism and wildlife. 8 years after he left, Sam returned to New Zealand and has guided outdoor tours throughout the country since. He has a passion for photography, particularly wildlife and aurora photography, and enjoys sharing camera tips with travelers on every expedition. In 2022, Sam joined Natural Habitat Adventures as a New Zealand expedition leader. Sam, thank you so much for being here today. Take it away, sir.
Thank you very much, Rob. I think you might have stolen one of my slides there with that introduction, so that'll shorten my presentation a bit. Yeah, good morning. Well, it's morning for me. It's 7 o'clock in New Zealand tomorrow, your time, 23rd of September. Yeah, thanks for having me. So I'm going to be introducing our New Zealand tour and sharing a few of our photos. And the photo on my cover page here is a new location that we visit this season that I will tell you about shortly. This is actually one of our lunch stops on top of a mountain. A little bit of an agenda for us. My presentation today there. Sort of talk about the people of New Zealand, the geography, cuisine, nightlife, ecology, geology, weather, and then a few tips specifically about your arrival in New Zealand. Visas and hopefully I'll leave enough time for questions and answers as we go. But my plan this morning was to talk about the animals and follow our itinerary with the animals some of the animals we're going to see on our tour and weave some of these other topics into it. So bear with me and we'll see how it works. So a little bit about New Zealanders. Yeah, we're very much known in New Zealand for being very relaxed and laid back people. We're named after kiwis, birds, not the fruit or the boot polish that some of you might have heard of. We love playing rugby. We love sailing. In fact, we love all sports. We just won some medals in the international track and field this week that we're very proud of. You can probably tell we've got a bit of a funny accent and we say silly things like she'll be right and sweet as, which I think reflect that very laid back nature. That usually means we're about to do something silly, but we think it'll be fine. And we love to host and welcome people to New Zealand. And hopefully when you're here, those of you that are coming to visit us, you'll see some of that European and Pacifica culture. The Maori people who are indigenous to New Zealand came down from the Pacific Islands around about 700 years ago. And proudly nuclear free. Yes, that's a story I'll tell you on the itinerary about when our Prime Minister was at the Oxford Union debates and had a very short repartee with one of the debaters there. Cemented our belief in being a nuclear-free nation. And the photo on the left, or on my left anyway, is the bra fence in Cardrona, which perhaps tells you a little bit about our sense of humor in New Zealand. The story goes that one Christmas, a couple of local ladies perhaps had a little bit too much to drink and went and hung their bras on a fence, and the rest is history. Other people joined them, and now we have this probably 100-yard stretch of fence covered in bras. In fact, there's so many they have to go and cut some off throughout the year because it gets too heavy and starts to weigh the wires of the fence down. Nowadays, there's a little donation box for breast cancer as well. But this is the sort of thing you might expect to see in New Zealand. I want to quickly introduce our expedition leaders in New Zealand. Judy McKenzie is from Invercargill at the bottom of the South Island. She used to be a nurse and has traveled overseas a lot as well. In fact, she's just been traveling with Natural Habitat over our winter season. So no doubt she'll be sharing some of these stories with her guests on her itineraries this year. Very enthusiastic, very full of energy, and loves hosting all our guests from around the world. And when she's not on tour, she's always gardening, biking, hiking, walking, skiing. And what she hasn't put on there is spoiling her grandchildren as well, which I know for a fact is a big part of her home duties. We've also got Shuka is one of our New Zealand guides, originally from the Netherlands. And obviously, when you're Dutch, you grow up sailing. And so she sailed competitively in New Zealand. And over our winter season, she goes back to the Netherlands and sails yachts throughout Europe, and then comes back for our summer season to guide Natural Habitat adventures. Loves surfing and skiing, and lives in Riverton, which is a small town on the south coast of New Zealand that we actually pass through on our tours. It's a wonderful cultural museum in Riverton, so we stop and spend some time in a very, very small town where Shuka lives. And we also have Jacob Emerson as one of our expedition leaders. Jacob is an Australian expedition leader and is starting to do some New Zealand tours with us as well. He lives here in Queenstown, same place as Judy and I live, but rumored to be moving back to Australia. Judging by his Instagram stories, I think he might have already left us. He has got a funny Australian accent, but I appreciate it's a bit rich from me to comment on that. And he's a keen photographer and videographer, and I've got there, look up his documentary about the New Zealand sea lion, a little project that he did, and I think it's about a 20-minute documentary, and well worth having a little look at and learning a little bit more about the story of the New Zealand sea lion. Actively involved with breeding programs for some of our native species. The Fio is a native duck that lives in freshwater. The kiwi, and Patiki, another duck species. And Jacob is also hosting a webinar series at the moment. If you haven't already seen them, the third episode of that will be coming up shortly, but you can watch the first 2 episodes online already. And this is me. And as I said, Rob, you've probably stolen my thunder for this slide, but thank you very much for the introduction. Yes, grew up in New Zealand's South Island and started working in the corporate world before heading away traveling and seeing the light and finding myself working in tourism. I also do a little bit of teaching at a tourism school, so I get to use my economics degree teaching vocational sort of training course for maybe 18, 19-year-olds who want to get into the tourism industry. I do a bit of work with the Department of Conservation and lead expeditions for Natural Habitat. And I think I'm going to be hosting another webinar in December that's, I would say, as yet untitled, but keep an eye out in your inboxes for that one. Looking forward to talking to you again soon. So my first species, and perhaps the first species that we will see on tours, are the albatross. And in particular, New Zealand has the only mainland albatross breeding colony in the world. And that is on one of the headlands in Dunedin. So on day 1 of our tour, we go out and look for the royal albatross. And embarrassingly, as I say that, I haven't actually got any royal albatross photos on this slide. bottom left one, the bright white one, that is a wandering albatross, and this is the largest albatross species in the world. The next one is a Buller's albatross, and Selvins is the one that is just trying to take off there with one foot, striding out in front of the other. And these photos were all taken down off Stewart Island as part of our itinerary. So expecting to see albatross on 2 days of our itinerary. Wonderful big birds, wonderful migrators, and very, very efficient flyers. They lock their wings into position so that they can glide incredibly efficiently. And the breeding albatross come back to New Zealand around about the start of October. So those guests who are on our first itinerary, and some of you will be packing your bags ready for the North Island extension in the next day or so, I suspect. The albatross will be back just in time for our first itinerary. So that's perfect. We'll go out looking for them. And I thought I'd have a little bit of fun with this. So albatross travel about 120,000 miles a year around the Southern Ocean. So big migratory journeys. In New Zealand, we also welcome back bar-tailed godwits, which come down from North America every year. They have the longest non-stop migration of any species in the world at about 18,000 miles. We get humpback whales. They come 6,000 miles every year to be in New Zealand. Fiordland crested penguins, they travel 4,000 miles. Long-finned eels come 1,500 miles down from the Pacific, from the deep ocean trenches there where they're born. Once here, the animals don't travel far on land, but we do. So this is I've overlaid there, you can see a map of New Zealand over a map of America, because people don't realize how big New Zealand is. Because we're always on the globe or on the map next to Australia, and Australia is obviously a whopping big country, so it makes New Zealand look quite small. But there on this map, you can see that the height of New Zealand is roughly the height of the United States as well. And so, for us traveling around New Zealand, we've got 3 boat trips, 2 planes, a helicopter, 2 different vans, and a flotilla of kayaks to get us around our itinerary. And because we are covering quite a bit of journey, let me see if I can click the button. And there you go. This is our route that we take around New Zealand. And so we're covering off quite a bit of landscape. There is a fair bit of time in the van making sure that we can take you around a lot of different highlights. This is not an itinerary where we stay in one accommodation and can see everything from one place. We do move around a lot, so it does mean there's a bit of time in the van to make it work. But it's well worth it, because by moving around like this, we get to visit some fantastic landscapes and meet some fantastic wildlife in different areas. So the red part of that line is our journey in the van. The blue part of the line is where we're in the air. This is one of our boat journeys. This is our Stewart Island pelagic cruise, where we're out looking for those albatross, looking out for penguin species as well as some of those other ocean birds. And increasingly, we're looking out for New Zealand sea lions, the ones that I mentioned Jacob did his little webinar or documentary about. One of the other species we're looking for in Dunedin and in Stewart Island is the penguin species. And New Zealand is home to something like 15 of the 18 species of penguins. And that's because they originated here. And the first penguin was called Waimanu, which is a Maori word. Wai is water, Manu is bird. So literally the first penguin we know as water bird. They were well extinct before anybody arrived in New Zealand, but nevertheless, their ancestors live on. And the photos on the left of the screen there with the 3 little chicks looking up, These are yellow-eyed penguins. They are at a rehabilitation facility that we visit in Dunedin. Underneath them is a little penguin, also known as little blue penguins or fairy penguins. And then there's a more mature yellow-eyed penguin. Underneath that, this is a Fiordland crested penguin that was swimming around in the water in Milford Sound. And then on the right, these are Fiordland crested penguins, and they come ashore to nest in the rainforest. And we can see them on our tours during October and November. And they come up the beach to their nests, probably about 30 feet away from us. It's a really special part of that journey that we get to experience over the next couple of months. I should say as well, these penguins unfortunately now have the title to being some of the rarest penguins in the world. So the rarest penguin in the world, despite when you see them seeing thousands of them at once, is the Galapagos penguin. But closely behind that is the yellow-eyed penguin, and I think in third place is the Fiordland crested penguin. Fiordland cresteds are doing reasonably well at the moment. Their population is holding steady, and the sites that we visit, they're actually increasing in population. Unfortunately, the yellow-eyed penguin is going the other way. So we'll learn a bit more about their journey on the tour, what the struggles that the yellow-eyed penguin are facing and what's being done about it. We've very recently, in the last month, announced a restriction on fishing in some of their habitat, and hopefully that'll help things. Yeah, well, penguins in the Dunedin Wildlife Hospital, they get fed a fish slurry. Kiwi birds don't like peas. We know this because kiwis that are raised in captivity to help that population, they feed them a mixture of usually dog roll with a few other supplements thrown in, like peas and corn. And sadly for the people who look after those birds, the kiwi will pick out the peas and corn and throw them around the room and leave the keepers to pick up after them. New Zealand fur seals don't chew their food. They kind of rip things apart, and you'll see them thrashing around in the water. New Zealand food is based on our British heritage. Absolutely. Sorry, that bullet point's out of order, isn't it? And the New Zealand pigeon is one of the largest in the world. And this is a New Zealand pigeon in the photo on the right there, hanging upside down and trying to feed on the little leaves of a kowhai tree there. And the pigeons, these guys up to 30 ounces, and they really don't know how heavy they are and end up in these kind of precipitous positions. But they're an important part of our forest because they've got a big gape and they can eat really large berries or fruits and spread those around the forest. Unfortunately, or fortunately for them, depending, I guess, on your perspective, they often hold these berries in their crop after they swallow them. And on a sunny day, the berries in the crop will start to ferment, and these New Zealand pigeons can end up a little bit inebriated, and then they try and fly, which doesn't go to plan when you're not built as the most aerodynamic thing in the world. But our food on the tour, yeah, New Zealand cuisine, as I said, kind of a British influence, and we love dessert, and I say perhaps a little bit too much. But a couple of desserts that hopefully you'll get a chance to try while you're in New Zealand. One is pavlova, which is a meringue-based dessert with fruit and cream. And pavlova's not a New Zealand word. It's named after a Russian ballerina. And no doubt, if you're doing an Australian itinerary and a New Zealand itinerary, you'll hear both countries claim to have invented this dessert. And that's a raging debate that goes on between the two countries. Poor Jacob's going to be in two minds when he talks about it on his trips. And another one is hokey pokey ice cream, which is vanilla ice cream with honeycomb chunks in it. I don't think there's any debate about where that one comes from. And I think I can promise you that we'll have hokey pokey on on my tours at least, because it's an important part of New Zealand, and hopefully we'll get you addicted on the ice cream, and that'll get you addicted to New Zealand, and you'll come back and visit us again and again. A little bit more about the food that you can expect to eat on our trips. And we have a bit of a mixture, and we end up in some fairly remote places on our itineraries. Stewart Island that we visit on, we get there on day 2 and we leave on day 4. There's only about 500 people live on Stewart Island, and so there's only one pub, and we get to, I tell my guests, we get to eat there twice. And I'll tell this again, but I say, look, this is fantastic, because that means when you can't decide what you want to have on the menu, you get to have 2 options. Keep one for the second night. So we eat in pubs, we eat in castles. On our first night, dinner is at Larnax Castle, where we sleep. There'll be some field picnics, as you can see in the photo on the right. This is Mitch, one of our drivers, having a picnic lunch in Wanaka that I've prepared. So good luck to you all. And we finish our itinerary with a home-hosted dinner. We go and see Dave and Catherine in Christchurch. And Catherine's cooking is inspired by Ottolenghi. And so she does an absolute fantastic job of that. And it's a lovely way to see out our tour. Yeah, we're going to make sure while you're here, you try the blue cod, and especially down in Stewart Island, because that's where it's caught. And we call it blue cod. Captain Cook, who was one of the first Europeans in New Zealand, he had a lovely habit of calling things after things that he knew. So he called all our trees pine trees, even though they're not pines. And he called blue cod cod, even though it's actually perch. New Zealand lamb will be on the itinerary, hokey pokey ice cream, and Anzac biscuits, which is something that came out of the war as a really sturdy biscuit that people could send to their loved ones who were overseas, and they would survive the journey. Ours will be a lot fresher than that. Usually Judy, our expedition leader, bakes those biscuits the night before, so we'll try and have some of those on our itinerary also. Oh, there's Dave and Catherine's house for our final dinner, and this the other photo is in one of the wilderness lodges looking out at the Southern Alps for our meals while we're at the wilderness lodge. And you've got to be careful while you're eating in New Zealand. Yes, so a couple of little lambs up at the wilderness lodge there being fed their milk. And in the second photo, it's a little bit hard to make out, but there's a blurry brown figure, and that is a flightless bird who's forgotten that it's flightless, trying to steal someone's sandwich out of their paper bag lunch there. And the last photo is one of our parrots, a Kia, K-E-A. And it's trying to eat someone's car, hopefully not one of our NetHab vehicles, but they are very mischievous and love to chew on all things. Yeah, sorry, the bird in the middle is a weka, W-E-K-A, the one that's the flightless bird attempting to fly there in hope of a sandwich. Down on Stewart Island, we are looking out for kiwi. We have 5 species of kiwi in New Zealand. There's about 70,000 birds alive. One of the most common is the southern brown tokaweka, which is what we're hoping to see on Stewart Island. We're also looking to meet the North Island brown kiwi in captivity later in the itinerary to make sure that we all see them up close. You'll see my photos. One has come out in black and white, and the other one is red. When we're out looking for the kiwi, they have very sensitive eyes, and they are a nocturnal bird as a rule. And so we use a red light, and that means your photos are going to come out red, as you can see, or you can put them into black and white, which works quite well also. But it's incredibly low light, so it is often one of those things where you're better just to put the camera away and enjoy the moment for yourself. And we actually walk up and down an airport runway looking for them. So it's very stable and flat underfoot. but it is very dark when we go out for that one. Our guides will have red torches, and they actually prefer you not to bring a torch as well, because we don't want to risk scaring the birds off with too much light. But between it being a very flat surface to walk on and the guides' torches, and ourselves as expedition leaders happy to lend you a hand or a shoulder as we do that walk and a bit of moonlight, most people are fairly comfortable on that little excursion. The kiwi are down on Stewart Island, and to get to Stewart Island, we take a little 20-minute flight in the little plane you can see in the photo there. They are 9 passengers per plane. The most important part about this is we do need to pack our luggage for those 2 nights in a little smaller bag rather than bringing our big suitcases. Hopefully your bag ends up being less than 33 pounds per person. If there's 2 of you and you want to combine and bring a bigger bag, and that'll be probably 50 or 60 pounds, and that usually works out absolutely fine as well. Or usually that should be absolutely fine as well. We need to limit our luggage so that it can all be carried across on the plane. And of course, after 2 sleeps, you'll get your full bag left. And while we're away on the island, we leave it in a locked trailer with our driver, who unfortunately for them, they don't get to join us on the Stewart Island excursion, but we will see them again. We new this year, actually, we have duffel bags that you can use if you want to use one of our NatHab duffel bags, and that'll save you buying something especially for that part of the journey. But of course, and these, if you're thinking about it and wondering how much space you've got, they're the same as the duffel bags that NatHab does sell on the website. Or of course, you can bring your own. But I've found one of those duffel bags is perfect for that journey. And we also have water bottles and coffee mugs that you can borrow while you're with us in New Zealand. Previously, we used to send these out to people, and you end up with a cupboard full of water bottles and coffee mugs, which kind of goes against what we're trying to achieve with natural habitat. And so by all means, bring your own ones from home. But if you haven't got one, or you haven't brought one with you, we'll have some that you can use to keep yourself hydrated through the journey. Although I have to admit, because I'm not a coffee drinker, I don't do a lot of coffee stops on my itineraries. So my advice is always to fill it up at breakfast time. And if you get lucky that I stop somewhere else for coffee, that's great. But I want to be out with the animals. So those cups, those travel mugs do a really good job of keeping things warm. You will see me sipping from my mug this morning in my presentation, but I can assure you it's tea and not coffee, and I'm not particularly precious about it. Lovely. So yeah, Stewart Island, looking for kiwi. Oh, here's a couple more in the black and white there. They're very solitary animals, so to see 2 kiwi at the same time is a really special thing, and fingers crossed we'll have some of that this season. And well, kiwi are nocturnal, as are many of our other species: maupoa, kakapo, frogs. Our geckos are nocturnal, eels, bats. And they were nocturnal because the top New Zealand predator has always been a bird, the New Zealand falcon, or Haast's eagle. And one way to escape from a predator is to sleep when it's active and then come out at night. The New Zealand falcon, though, which is our apex endemic predator, they sleep in a scrape on the ground. Kaka, our parrots, they sleep in rocky caves. Our bat species, our bats are tiny. They're about the size of your thumb, and so they nest in tree cavities. Other sleeping habits, kakapo steal feathers to make their nests, and I'm sure lots of other birds do this as well, but it means that for conservationists, the kakapo is an indicator species when they're working on those predator-free islands where the kakapo live. They will have a look in the nest and see which feathers the kakapo have, I'll say borrowed, but stolen is probably more correct. And that gives them an indication of who else is living on the island. and what species are there and how they're doing. So that's a fun little habit from the kakapo. And Fiordland crested penguins nest in the rainforest, which is very unusual for a penguin species. And sleeping in the lawn on that photo there, that is a New Zealand fur seal. So speaking of sleeping, on our itinerary, you can expect some late nights. I put as late as 1 a.m. on our night out looking for kiwi on Stewart Island. It could be as late as 1 o'clock. And we'll have some early starts. Our day when we depart from Milford Sound, we actually try and leave the accommodation about 6 a.m. or just afterwards. And we are checked out of the hotel by 6 a.m. So just a little bit of advanced warning for you there. And we have a little saying with the guides, animal count over thread count. So we can't always stay at the nicest accommodation because we want to be in some pretty remote locations. So we don't always have access to air conditioning, but you will always have an ensuite on your room to give you a bit of an indication. You can absolutely bring your sleep apnea machine and you can absolutely take it on that little flight across to Stewart Island. And we don't necessarily have distilled water where we're staying. But I think for a 12-day itinerary, using the tap water in New Zealand is absolutely fine. It's not going to build up with calcium over that time, and we don't have particularly hard water in New Zealand. We sleep in 7 different accommodations over our 12 nights, so we do keep moving around. The most we do is 2 nights in an accommodation in a row. My little top tip for that is that I always bring an oversized suitcase, and that way when I've got to repack it, I'm not sitting on it and trying to squish the zip closed. I can just throw it all in there and it fits easily, which makes repacking and moving more straightforward. And we won't be offended if you sleep in the van on our various legs of the journey if you need to catch up on a few winks. And I do tell my guests the first part of our itinerary is really, really busy. We do have the late nights where we're out looking for kiwi, and we do have the early starts for Milford in the first half of the itinerary. And it's once we get to about day 6, we get to Wanaka and we start doing more regular 2-night stops in places, and the tempo slows down. We recover and enjoy some of those locations. And having a big yawn there, that is one of the yellow-eyed penguins at the rehabilitation centre in Dunedin. One of the other things we're looking for on Stewart Island are some of our native mammals, the sea lions and the fur seals. Down the bottom, having a snooze, that's the New Zealand fur seal, and then the other 2 there are New Zealand sea lions. And this big male sea lion on the right there, they come in at up to about 1,000 pounds. And you'll appreciate that this photo is on a long lens. And so this seal is a reasonable distance away from us, but something we do have to be wary of, being chased by New Zealand sea lions. And sea lions and fur seals, as you'll hear, their numbers were rapidly depleted in the 1830s, but now they're starting to make a real comeback, which is exciting. We're also keeping a bit of an eye out for Hector's dolphins, which is a very small dolphin found inland, or I was going to say inland, but in the close coastal waters, sometimes only about 20 yards from the shore, and also the bottlenose dolphins on our various coastal stops. And this guy needs his photo in the presentation. Look at him. This is a little New Zealand sea lion pup, and his mum has come up into the forest on Ulva Island and had her pup there nice and safely hidden away from any boisterous males or any other sea lions. So hiding in the forest and waiting for mum to return. And we spotted this one last year on our natural habitat itinerary. So a very real possibility you might see something like this while you're with us. A little bit about our ecology. So I was just enjoying the photo there. It's a bit tricky to make out, but that's a New Zealand robin or a South Island robin in the photo there. They're very, very friendly birds. And the reason that some of these birds, like the robin, are so friendly is that New Zealand broke off from the supercontinent of Gondwanaland before mammals evolved. And because there was no mammals, our birds have adapted to owning the landscape. They flew into New Zealand as they evolved, and the land was all theirs. There were some insects that hitchhiked on New Zealand and date back to the creation. I'm not going to try that word, it's too early in the morning. But things like the tuatara date back hundreds of years that somehow have survived New Zealand's almost entirely being sunk under the sea and then re-emerging. We're going to meet the tuatara on the west coast. We've got really old plants as well, including something called Mesipterus that dates back some 350 million years. Different species of tree ferns, about 50 species of those. We've got beech trees, and one of the science jokes that you'll hear on our trips is the beech trees in the northern hemisphere, they are called fagus. In the southern hemisphere, our beech trees are called nothofagus. It's the scientific name because they are not fagus. They're not the same species at all, but they have spread throughout the southern hemisphere. There are bones of an ancient mammal that have been discovered that scientists haven't quite figured out how it got to New Zealand yet. But for hundreds or millions of years, New Zealand was completely mammal-free. And so the birds and the wildlife adapted to a life without mammals. As I mentioned, they nest on the ground, they nest in tree cavities without fear of things sniffing them out. Historically. So once mammals have been introduced to New Zealand, unfortunately, that's had a significant toll on some of our endemic species. But that's a story for another day. Oh, where's the mouse? I mentioned Ulva Island as well. Ulva Island is a little island off Stewart Island that we visit, and down on Ulva Island, lots of species that otherwise we wouldn't get to see because this little predator-free island provides a habitat for them. And things like the yellowhead in the bottom corner, there's about 3,000 yellowhead. I was going to say in New Zealand, there's about 3,000 yellowhead in the world, and there's a big population on Ulva Island, and so hopefully we'll have a chance to see them. The next photo is our smallest bird, about the size of a ping pong ball, and it's called a rifleman, or titipunamu is the Maori name, which translates to little green thing, titipunamu. Our friendly robin, and then one of our parakeets there in the photos. So Ulva Island is predator-free reserve, and that means an abundance of birds, or a relative abundance of birds. And I make no apologies that the first part of my tour, or the first part of our New Zealand itinerary, I should say, is somewhat bird intensive, and New Zealand is a land of birds. So it might feel like a birding tour at the start, but I can assure you, after the first few days, we'll move on to some of the other aspects of New Zealand, the landscapes and the farming. One other creature that we are going to meet, a little insect called namu namu, or the New Zealand sandfly, similar to Scotland's midges of the Simulidae family. And look, I've tried to get them added to our wildlife checklist, so it's important that we do see them while we're in New Zealand. The females bite, they need the extra protein when they're raising their young. And the bites are itchy, and some people will react and get a little bit of a welt, but they don't carry any diseases, so they are just discomfort. They're slow flyers, so walking is enough that they won't keep up with us. If there's wind or rain, they won't. They'll go away and hide. But after rain, when you've got that sort of really humid environment, they can be at their worst. And we tend to encounter them in Milford Sound and on the west coast. The best thing to do is cover your skin, wearing gloves, long socks. If they're particularly bad, maybe tuck your trousers into your socks, and long sleeves on a shirt is the best way to prevent any bites. Repellents can help. Something like picaridin or oil-based repellents can be really good, or DEET is also an option um, if you're happy using DEET. Um, and if you do get bitten, an antihistamine tablet can stop the itching. The itch is our body reacting to the bite, and something like that usually soothes them. You may not notice being bitten at the time, but I find after a sandfly encounter, it's when I'm trying to sleep in the evening that they get itchy again. And so I'll often just take an antihistamine to relieve that. Once we're back on the mainland, we visit a place called Tiano, and in Tiano there's a bird sanctuary where they are helping to raise takahe, which is a bird that was thought to be extinct for 50 years. These giant blue birds. And actually, I'll steal one of your questions from the end of the show. This one on my t-shirt is a takahe as well. So we're going to look for these are rails. They flew over from Australia hundreds of thousands of years ago. In the absence of any predators in New Zealand, they got fat and lazy and forgot how to fly. Their wings are all but vestigial now. It's a really cool story about how they were rediscovered about 70 years ago that you'll learn on the itinerary. The other little one in the photo there is our diving duck, the New Zealand scaup. We're also looking out for other ducks, the brown teal, blue ducks, and other rails such as the pukeko and Eurasian coot. And the weka is also a rail. And then we kind of head down into Milford Sound, which is a great time to talk about our geology. And the photo there is Chris, one of our drivers as well, taking a photo looking down towards Milford Sound. New Zealand's got a unique geology, and it's a very, very young country. The landscape is still being formed by volcanic and tectonic activities. So there are active volcanoes, particularly in the North Island of New Zealand. And in the South Island, the earthquakes are constantly lifting up and forming the mountain range. And I was told once that our tallest mountain, Mount Cook, which is about probably about 2.5 miles tall, it would be over 7 miles tall if it wasn't for the erosions. So New Zealand is this submerged continent of Zealandia. It's been recently discovered. So if you've got your t-shirt saying you've been to all 7 continents when you reached Antarctica, you can throw that away, and maybe we'll design you an 8-continent t-shirt when you visit New Zealand. But anyway, this continent is largely under the water, and New Zealand has spent a lot of time under the water. And so a lot of the rock is very soft sedimentary rock. As the tectonic activity lifts up our mountains, this soft sedimentary rock erodes away and fills in the riverbeds, creating braided rivers, and exposes hopefully a few fossils and things like that, but shapes the landscape. And in comparison to Australia, where you've got a very old landmass, so it's become very flat, New Zealand is a very volatile landscape. And this soft sedimentary rock then gets shaped by other erosion processes, the glaciers during the ice ages in particular, the rainfall and so forth. And so there are 14 big fjords in the national park on the southwest coast. And we go and visit the northernmost and arguably the grandest of those fjords, Milford Sound, on our itinerary. And with some luck, there you go. There's a couple more photos from Milford. There's one of my guests, Max, getting a photo of a waterfall from one of our boat excursions. Natural habitat, stunningly put on a private cruise for us in Milford. So we get up early so that we can have the fjord and the boat to ourselves. it's part, and we have breakfast on board that boat as well, which is a real treat, and explore some of the landscape all to ourselves. And when we bring our boat back in the middle of summer, we've been out on our itinerary with 11 guests and 2 NatHab staff, or 1 NatHab staff, and a crew of 3 usually. And we give that boat back, and there's going to be up to 150 people on it after us. So it's really a special part of the itinerary. And new on this year's itinerary, we actually did a couple of test runs last year, and we have a helicopter flight as part of our itinerary. And if the weather allows us, we're going to fly out of Milford Sound and land up in an alpine setting to have our lunch and do a few photo stops, and potentially land on a glacier as well. It cuts out a huge amount of driving time in the van for us, and lets us experience some pretty amazing locations on the way. So the bottom left there, looking out over Lake Whakatabu, Queenstown Lake there. It's a really, really cool new addition. As I said, we tried it out a couple of times at the end of last season. It didn't happen on a few itineraries because of the weather, and sadly, that's a real part of being in New Zealand, the weather. And it came about, and I was joking about this with the tour manager, but it came about because we drove into a storm in October last year, and there were actually slips on the road, and we had to organize some helicopters to keep us on our itinerary. And the guests really enjoyed it, and so we thought, hey, let's see if we can add this into the itinerary. And I'll tell you a bit more about the storm later on, but really excited that we get to do this together as well. Here we are. Here's one of our groups on a glacier with the helicopter trip there. Next on the itinerary, we get to Lake Wanaka. We have our 3rd boat trip on the lake there. We're looking out for the Australasian crested grebe that won New Zealand's Bird of the Century competition a couple of years back. If you're a fan of the John Oliver show, you might have seen New Zealand's, or the Australasian crested grebe on that show. He made a feature of it, but I'll tell you that story on our itinerary. Also on our little island excursion in Lake Wanaka, Weka, New Zealand bellbirds, the mountain stone weta, which is a cicada-like insect that again dates back hundreds of years and is able to be completely frozen in a block of ice for thousands of years. And when it's thawed out, it's I don't know if it comes back to life, but it's still alive. So a phenomenal insect that we're looking out for, as well as some geckos and New Zealand falcon, that top predator. So the boat excursion takes us to this little island called Mowaho Island, and we go for a hike on the island up to this lake on the island, in a lake on an island. And it's a lovely little setting, and a beautiful example of how the forest has been regrown through various interventions to restore it to being native habitat, and in turn that's really helped with the bird life. And of course there's no predators, or no mammalian predators, I should say, on that island, which is helping it to thrive. So it's a lovely highlight of the tour. And in fact, I normally say this is perhaps an unexpected highlight of the trip, visiting Mowaho Island in Wanaka. Yeah, day 7 is normally your first chance to do some laundry on the itinerary. So when you're packing for that, just keep that in mind. Sometimes there's an opportunity a few days earlier, but target, maybe it's going to be day 7. I've got a duplicate of my red crown parakeet photo there. My apologies. In the middle is the Fio, the blue duck. These ducks live in running water, not in ponds. And the one on the right, that's my New Zealand scorp, He's been having a splash in the lake there. And I mentioned the weta, I've mentioned tuatara. These are some of New Zealand's dinosaur species dating back hundreds of millions of years that we're going to meet. Sadly, we'll only be able to see tuatara in captivity. Unfortunately, they can't survive on the mainland with the threat of predation without being in some sort of enclosure. But there are many of these on offshore islands and so forth. Tuatara are incredibly unique. They are not lizards. They are reptiles, and they're from a family called Sphinodon. They're the only surviving member from that family, so they are a truly unique species. Weta, as I mentioned, absolutely bizarre, date back hundreds of millions of years. These particular ones can be frozen. And then our eels are also a very old lineage of long-finned eels, and not that they're not particularly photogenic, as you might guess from that photo. But normally I don't do the eel talk, and for whatever reason on this particular itinerary, I had to get into the river with the eels in my, I would call them my gum boots, but my rubber boots, and was not my favorite part of the itinerary, being in the river with them. But needless to say, they are completely harmless, and it's great to see that species because it is one that we have some concern for. Gosh, I better keep going through. I've only got a few minutes left. I mentioned there was a storm over on the west coast, and we had to get the helicopters to evacuate us. We got 14 inches of rain in 24 hours. There were 7 slips over the road on the west coast, and some cracks appeared that took several months to repair. As you can see, this was the car park at the Wilderness Lodge that we stay at, and that was completely flooded, and there's a New Zealand scorp swimming in the middle of the car park there. The lawn was flooded, and the eels came up onto the lawn. They can actually survive out of the water because the worms were being pushed out of the grass, and so they were getting a smorgasbord. And we got stuck on the west coast, and very quickly organised some helicopters, which took us over the Southern Alps, which was absolutely fantastic. But it is something that we need to be aware of, that we do get a lot of rain in New Zealand, and you probably can't hear it, but it's raining here in Queenstown today. Milford, where we visit on our itinerary, they get 25 feet of rain per year. And so we do need to make sure we're prepared to that. Do bring your wet weather pants and jackets, as well as some warm clothes, because when we're in the summertime, it can get up to, I've got on this slide 25 degrees, but 80 Fahrenheit. But in reality, actually in Wanaka on a hot day, it could be 90, even 95 Fahrenheit. At our most extreme. On the other hand, when we're out looking for kiwi at night, there's a bit of wind chill that very much could be literally about freezing temperature. So we do get a multitude of weather, and in the absence of crocodiles and snakes and poisonous jellyfish and all these other horrible things they have in Australia, we say we're scared in New Zealand. We're scared of the weather, and not just because we're not used to scary things, but because the weather does change a lot. So please do pack accordingly, and then we'll have a great time. There we go. There's a few rainy photos. There's a yellow-eyed penguin out off Stewart Island in the rain, and this is when we had that big rain event. I'm standing in the middle of the lawn there, and actually Mitch, one of our drivers, thought it'd be fun to take a photo of me out there. Those tall, long grass-like things you can see behind me are flax bushes. River is behind those flaxes, but it came up very close to the buildings. But nevertheless, during that event, we kept dry feet and we kept good spirits, and all's well that ended well. As we hit up the west coast, we're going to be looking for some of our parrot species, the kia and the kaka. These photos, you can see these are the kia, K-E-A, our South Island mountain parrot. And In the middle photo there, you can see Doug has his hokey pokey ice cream, which brings the Kia out, I think, and a lovely encounter there. And it looks to be less than 10 feet away from that very, very curious, very intelligent bird. Sadly, we don't see kakapo on this itinerary. There are something like 252 kakapo in the world, and they are all kept in offshore islands to protect them and help with their breeding success. And again, something we can learn about on our itinerary. And then we get to stay on a farm up in Arthur's Pass, and in particular, the big curly horned sheep there is a merino sheep. You'll have some responsibility there. You're expected to meet and cuddle some of the sheep and dogs on the farm. New Zealand actually has a species of dog that was bred here called the New Zealand Hunterway, and we'll see some of those animals in action on the farm, as well as meeting some farmers and some sheep, and particularly this time of year, the young lambs and some other birds that are living or have made their homes in some of the native forest that is part of the farm we stay on as well. A few more photos of wildlife there just to keep you going. Some New Zealand bellbird with the green with the red eye, a little tomtit. Down on the estuary there are godwits who have done their migration, bar-tailed godwits. More of my red-crowned parakeets there, and some pied stilts that we're looking out for. Quickly, when you arrive in New Zealand, you do need to apply for a New Zealand ETA. It's like a quick visitor visas type thing. You apply online. I think it's 23 New Zealand dollars. If you download their app and use it, it's $17. And if you ask for more money than that, you're probably not on the official website. There is also an international visitor levy of 100 New Zealand dollars that you'll pay when you go through that application process. And that levy goes towards providing tourism facilities, but also towards conservation. So try and think of it as a donation towards conservation, and it feels a bit better. And please also be careful with lithium batteries in your bags. New Zealand Airlines are really pedantic about this, and I've unfortunately had several guests had earbuds taken out of checked bags by security. So batteries aren't allowed to be over 160 watts or watt hours. So most power banks are under that, and I think most airlines, that's a universal rule. But make sure your earbuds and anything else that might have a lithium battery is in your carry-on luggage. And of course, please be very careful bringing any food products into New Zealand. Sealed things are typically okay, and I suppose processed foods are okay. But fruit, meat, honey, we've got enough of that in New Zealand already, so you don't need to bring your own, shall we say. But we're very nervous about the agricultural ramifications of bringing pest species in that could affect our environment. And if you arrive early in New Zealand and you've got some spare time in Dunedin, I've got a little list of activities there. And those of you who are doing the North Island extension, you will arrive in Dunedin the day before day one. So hopefully you'll have a little bit of an afternoon and a morning to explore Dunedin on your own before we pick you up. We meet you at the pre-night accommodation at 1:15 in the afternoon. We're going to bring you out to Larnax Castle where we spend our first night. We should be at the castle by 2 o'clock, and I'll do my welcome presentation. And we have a special guest comes to do a presentation then as well on most of our itineraries. And then after that, we're going to head out on the peninsula and look for albatross and penguins and other wildlife at about 3:15 on day one before we return to the castle for dinner. So in Dunedin, prior to us picking you up, there's several museums. The Founders Museum is very good. Dunedin's railway station, the photo on the bottom there is the most photographed building in New Zealand. Baldwin Street is the steepest street in the world. The university campus, there's a couple of breweries. St. Paul's Cathedral in the middle of town. They have a stained glass window with native birds on it, so you can practice your birding before the start of the trip. And there's also a fenced eco sanctuary, Orokonui. If you had a bit more time, you might head out that way. To conclude, a Maori proverb for you there. Kia homaru te haere. May your journeys be safe, your experiences enriching, and may you always find the way back home enriched with memories and stories to tell. That's me. Thank you very much. I've used up my full hour, but if Rob will let me, I'm happy to answer some questions if you've raised any along the journey there.
All right, Sam, I will totally let you answer some questions. So if you guys do have more questions, that you can submit them via the question field in your control panel. All right, let's get right to it. So can you tell us what time of year the trips run?
Yeah, our first itinerary this year starts, I think, on the very last day of September. You know, the ski fields are still running then, so we don't want to run any earlier. So we start in September and we finish, I think our last one will start in March. So over New Zealand's kind of spring, summer, and just getting into autumn.
Gotcha. Thank you. And if I'm a vegan or if I'm vegetarian, am I going to be okay on this trip?
Yes. New Zealand, particularly in some of the smaller locations, we're not great at advertising a lot of vegetarian or vegan options. We do like cheese and milk being an agricultural country in New Zealand, but we absolutely cater for different diets. And there may not always be things on the menu, but we always have a little bit of a conversation, and you wouldn't be the first one to come on our itineraries, and I'm sure you'll be absolutely fine.
Great, thank you. So, are elephant seals something that we're going to get to see?
There's actually been an elephant seal on the beach in Dunedin this month, and I think one up in, oh no, it was a leopard seal up in Wellington. The short answer is no. They are very rare that they are found on the beaches of mainland New Zealand. So chances are, even if there is one, we won't be in the right spot to see it. So sorry, probably not.
Oh well, one could only hope. And what about penguins?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of penguins are we going to see in January and February in New Zealand?
Cool. Yeah, January and February. I'm hoping to show you yellow-eyed penguin in the wild. Little penguin on a nesting box inside a reserve. Hopefully some little penguins on Stewart Island as well. They have a little colony down there. Sometimes we can see them coming ashore at night, and sometimes we see them out in the water during the day. Yeah, yellow-eyed penguin's pretty slim, but because they're sort of rare, but we're definitely looking out for them. And Fiordland crested penguin is the other one that we often see. In January, February, they have finished their nesting, so we're hoping to catch them fattening up, ready for the molt. And oddly, we seem to see them every now and again in Milford Sound or Stewart Island. There's actually a little cave where a couple of them nest and molt that we can see on our pelagic cruise. So I don't want to promise 3 species, but I'm aiming for 3 species throughout the itinerary. My best is 5 species with some of the other rockhopper species, but they were in rehabilitation. So we'll probably see 2 or 3 species throughout the season in a rehabilitation center, but you never know if things go right or perhaps wrong is the right word to say. They're up to 5 species.
Wow, very cool. Thank you. So for general purchasing and for tipping, should we be using local New Zealand dollars? If we're Canadian and we don't have US dollars, is it good to do that? And when it comes to tipping, like our adventure guides, are we using cash? Is there a non-cash option? What's best for us to do?
Yeah, lovely. Um, Generally, purchasing in New Zealand, a credit card is absolutely fine. Um, we're not really going anywhere that would be cash only, and a lot of places are actually going avoiding cash nowadays, funnily enough. But not all retailers will like AMX just because of the fee structure of that. So if you've got a MasterCard or a Visa, that's generally preferred. I'm going to tip everyone we see along the way with cash, so that's absolutely fine. And with regards tipping expedition leaders and drivers, we still love cash. You can, of course, also use the online portal that NetHab set up for online tipping, especially if you're doing Australia as well. I appreciate there's a value there. And NetHab passed that on 100% to us. Along the way, there are bank fees and tax implications and different things like that. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for clarifying that. So when I'm out there on the trip, what am I going to be able to get hiking poles from you guys, or is that something I should worry about bringing myself?
Oh, that feels like a loaded question. I have we carry about half a dozen hiking poles with us in the van, and if you've got your own ones and you like your ones, by all means bring them with you. If you forget them or we're doing a walk that you're less comfortable with, I have some spares with me. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Sam. So we've got some photographers who are interested in the trip. So will we be able to do some scenic areas of sunrises and sunsets?
I don't normally do sunrises and sunsets, um, and it's not a photography tour in that, we're not necessarily going to spend long stretches in one spot, giving you time over and over again to get the right photo. In saying that, we stay in Wanaka at the Edgewater Lodge, and you might have seen I had a photo of the Wanaka tree, which is in the middle of Lake Wanaka, set back with the mountains, and it's beautiful in the sunset or the sunrise. And because of where we're staying, you're absolutely welcome to go out and do that photography yourself in Lake Wanaka. On the west coast at Lake Moiraki as well, we are staying in next to a river, and again wander out and enjoy the sunrise yourself over Lake Moiraki or the sunset, and you'll be able to get some fantastic photos in those settings. But we're not necessarily all coming with you, if that makes sense. And something we're definitely looking for is some opportunities to get some of those different photographs. In Milford Sound, you'll get fantastic photos as well. We will be on a boat, although in the Sound it is very, very calm water. And so there'll be some challenges there. Your tripod's probably not much use on the boat, but nevertheless, it's incredibly picturesque.
So Sam, tell us what's next up for you. What's the next adventure you're going to be leading?
The next adventure I'm leading. So I am starting our first NetHab New Zealand itinerary almost a week today, and I only do New Zealand tours. I think I've got 5 or 6 that I'm hosting. I think 5 this summer. And but my next little project outside of natural habitat, I have put my name down to hopefully go and volunteer with the Kakapo. So I'm looking forward to hearing over the next month if I've been accepted for that, and that might be my end of season treat, getting taken off onto one of these islands to work with a very rare bird. Fingers crossed.
Well, Sam, if you get that, we want to hear all about it in a webinar. All right.
Yes.
I'm sorry to say that's going to be all the time we have for today, Sam. So I'd like to hand it back to you for any closing comments you have for us.
Thank you very much, Rob, for hosting us and hopefully giving some wonderful some insights into New Zealand. And I love showing off New Zealand to all of my guests. And this is a fun one to finish with, these photos here. This is one of our guests, Max, again last year on the helicopter flight. He's in his shorts there, but apparently I told him he could wear his swimsuit that day, so we put that on later in the day. But look, we look forward to welcoming you to New Zealand, and be well rested before you get here, because we're going to be very busy, and we've got a lot to see, and I look forward to sharing it with you all.
Sam, thank you so much for taking the time to present this amazing webinar to us today. And I'd also like to thank everyone who joined us today. So if you are interested in information on how you can travel to New Zealand with NatHab, please give us a call at 800-543-8917, or send us an email at info@nathab.com. Our adventure specialists are happy to help you out. And if you have a question about a trip that you already do have booked, feel free to reach out to your adventure specialist or our adventure concierge department. Join us tomorrow for our next Daily Dose of Nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and the replay will be available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody. We will see you next time.